All right, everybody, I've got the custody queens and team and Ron backstage. Ron, I'm so excited to have you on the show, by the way, because I've been watching you off and on, with Birdie and with that. And I thought, an appellate guy, like we got to get the appellate guy to answer some of these questions. I'm so excited. I want to tell everybody just briefly about what we're going to talk about real quick. So those who haven't been following the news and are completely living under a rock, you may know that Jules with True Crime Reactions filed public records requests and got from Moscow Police Department raw footage from I think it's 2:25 to 2:35 in the morning, somewhere around there, right in that 1 hour gap. And during that, she just did a live reaction where she was showing people the stuff and commenting at the time. I wanted her to kind of like, shut up, just let me listen to the raw thing. I don't want you to tell me what I hear. But when I did listen to the raw files that she put out there and on noise canceling headphones, several times I had to rip the headphones off my head. And I was like, I was shaking. I was like, I can't believe I just heard that. So I reached out to the custody queens. I'm like, hey, have you heard this video that's out there? I'm so pissed that I literally have filed a letter to the Idaho State Attorney General asking for a criminal investigation to be opened up, because I feel like if this wasn't known, that this is exculpatory information. That was my thought, that if any reasonable person heard those screams at 2:30 in the morning, any reasonable person might think the violence was committed during that window of time and not at 4:05 to 4:20 in the morning. So I asked the team to look over my letter that I sent to the Attorney General and some of the public records requests that we've launched. We're getting a lot of traction on my site about that, where people are like, go file that lawsuit. Well, I haven't filed a lawsuit. I'm asking for a lawsuit to be open, and I hope you understand the difference. But let's get into the law. And I first want to ask you guys, when you listen to the raw feed, what were your first reactions on that? I want to dive into the details, but what are your first reactions on listening to the raw feed?
Well, my first reaction was, holy shit, I'll say that. And it was, this completely blows up their entire timeline. And why the hell has it never been disclosed that two of the roommates next door left the premises, what appears to me to be in a hurry, and their car does not come back until a period of time, but clearly the video doesn't show them driving it back. But to me, it was hard to listen to. It was reaffirming so many doubts that I have had through this entire case. And it actually made me have even less faith in the integrity of this case and the way it's been handled.
Yeah, well, while I was watching it, I pulled up the address on Google Earth so I could get an idea of where things were. Yeah. And I noted that during this video, there's cars that are crossing the road on the other side of the house across the street, that we can hear those. Yes. And those are way further than 1122 house. I just can't imagine that, especially if there's only one person who is the one involved, the perpetrator, that you're not hearing anything from a house that close. And then I hear the screams, the fear, the terror that you hear in those. I mean, it comes across. That's not somebody having fun to me. Yeah. So I don't know.
Not a party.
I don't know what that would be other than somebody truly in fear, in terror. So I really want to know, did the defense have this recording, and what did they do with it?
Bingo. I've asked that question a million times to myself, Ron.
So before I follow up, because I got a lot of follow-ups to what you just said, but Sam, what was your thoughts on the initial pass?
I think for me, I mean, it was terrible to listen to. It really was. I think it's a very hard play for anyone to say that there was just partying going on. But I think what was noteworthy to me was this wasn't one scream. And so when I'm looking at, plausible other explanations for a scream, I mean, I really think it told a story, and it's part of the story that hasn't yet been told, that there was a lot more that went on and that the timeline is candidly just BS. I think it's starting to, for me, get to a point of view where, I'm always continuing to go back to that reasonable doubt standard that the prosecution, they really need to prove their case by. But when I take a step back, it's hard for me to assume that it's possible that all of these terrible screams happened and they somehow were not related to this very tragic event that specific night.
And the roommates didn't hear it.
Right. I will say I've got the video queued up for us, and I think it might be good to play some of it, because one of the questions I want to say is, or ask is, there's people on my my videos that are saying, "Oh my God, dude, that's just partying." And like Ron said, I've never heard a party like that. I don't know what kind of parties you go to, but those screams are not. Somebody literally said, "I'm a mother. I know what rough housing sounds like. That's just kids literally having so much fun that they're laughing until they cry." And I'm like, I don't know if you're just an epic troll or you're insane and you need to get yourself some help. I mean, it's like, how do you get to the point that you think that that's people having such a good time that they're laughing until they cry? And so,
and I'm a mom of 3, and that is an absolute crock of BS.
Yeah, and so part of me wants to do this. Part of me wants to play that first scream at real quick and talk about that. Is this just everybody having fun out there kind of thing? So let me go ahead and pull this up, and I'm going to skip forward to the first moment. All right. So on this video, you'll see that I have noted that came into the neighborhood about this time was a car that just came around the corner. It heads. Now, again, for those who don't understand, there's a lot of misconception about this thing. So I want to clarify this again for discussion points. The house directly in front of us that's all lit up like a Christmas tree is not 111 or not 1122 King Road residence. A lot of people keep thinking, oh, I can see people doing things and committing the murders in there. That's not the house that we believe the murders were taking place at. It's not 112, or it's not 1122 King Road, which is behind us. This porch is actually the porch of 1112, it's slightly different number. It's looking at the intersection of the crossroads of King Road, which runs kind of, this way in front of that house in front of us. And then along the side of us is Queen Road. And again, these houses face King Road, which is why their house numbers have the King Road residence address on it. So trying to make sure you understand the logistics of this neighborhood. So
now, Lee,
the sounds that you were...
Was that the greenhouse in your videos?
Yes. That's the greenhouse.
See? Yeah, that was. Yep. I think I even pointed at that, saying that's where the Dateline focused a lot of their their footage. But that's, if you go back and watch Lee's videos when he actually goes to Moscow, we actually did an episode with him. But that is the greenhouse that is at the end of that of Queen Road.
Yeah, and just to the left of that house, in this, as this image shows, is a place that we believe that Jack DeCour, ex-boyfriend of Kaylee Gonzalez, was living along with some friends. There's stories about him going back that night after the bar. They were all at the bar together. He went back out to the corner club. He went to sleep for the night. That was the story. Kaylee and Maddie were texting him frantically between about the time the murders are happening. They're texting him during that time frantically. He's not answering. That's all part of the story that's out there in public record. So before we hear this scream, I hope I gave us enough moments of it. There's muddled conversation that you can hear on camera through the 1112 camera that's on the porch here. So whether the $1 million question, number one, of this whole thing is, where are sounds coming from? Because we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know if they're coming from inside the house. We don't know if they're coming from next door, if they're getting picked up. Because the camera is really good. As Ron pointed out, you can literally hear cars behind the house way at the end of this lot on Walenta Drive that are passing behind. You can hear those cars plain as day from this camera here. So sound is tricky in this area. Everything, as you guys know, the custody queens were on with me, everything's super tight in this area. It's like an echo chamber. Everything's kind of in a bowl shape. All the buildings can bounce sound around. So keep that in mind when we're talking about the sounds, is we can't say definitively where the scream comes from, right?
Yeah, right. And I would say probably from, at least from looking at it, the overhead version, probably 1122 is not much further than that pickup truck that's sideways that we're seeing the side of from this point.
Probably closer. It's right behind it. It's 25 feet maybe to the door. It's right behind us. Hey, there's Kristen with the phone.
I swear I even fixed it right before I got on.
It's a running gag. I love it. It's like a regular feature.
Right when Sam and I were having lunch before, I even fixed it, and now I'm like, I'm ready to throw this phone.
I'm gonna start calling her just to keep her honest during.
I'm about ready to throw the phone at the King Road house. Oh, well, that doesn't.
All right. Okay. So here's what I want to do. If you're listening to this for some reason, if you're listening to this first time, as a warning, this does have some shock value. A lot of people say that they have nightmares after listening. I'm not overplaying this. This gives some people nightmares. It's very, very shocking for some people. So hopefully you're the kind of person, you realize you're listening to a crime show, right? So you're going to hear potentially crimes, and it's a brutal thing, and you're either going to be able to handle it or not. So I'm not trying to do that for sensationalism. What I want you to do is I want everybody to be quiet on our panel. We're just going to listen to a little bit of the sound that's going on, which is kind of the ambient sounds of party or something, whatever. And then I want you to hear that I say isolated, but nobody's isolated the audio, in my opinion. It's what you hear on camera raw footage. And then we'll stop it shortly after. We'll talk about what we hear. So that was the scream again. We can play it again, but does that sound like people having so much fun that they're literally laughing until they cry?
No.
And
I don't know how you I don't know how you hear anything other than genuine terror. Either pain or terror, but probably terror. It feels like, it sounds like, you know what I imagine, and maybe this is my mind playing tricks, that somebody saw something so horrific and they just lose their shit. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like somebody losing their shit on what they saw. But
yeah. It's not even a surprise scream, like it's not even like, someone comes up and it is terror or pain. It is one of those.
Yeah.
I actually think it's terror. I mean, and I know everyone has a different, pain scale and things like that. But I mean, I've broken a lot of bones playing soccer, and it sounds like terror. It doesn't even sound like, it's pretty. I've been to many parties, and I think about people screaming at a party, jumping into a pool or something like that, laughing, giggling, stuff. That's not this. It's not this.
And that's definitely not my kids horsing around. I'll tell you that.
Let's run through a couple of scenarios to see if you guys think it passes the sniff test. So we know that according to Dylan Mortenson's testimony, she was watching Vampire Diaries on her TV that night with a friend. Could that simply be a TV that's playing a TV show, and on the TV show, an actor or actress screams in the TV show, and we've missed the TV show part because it was too quiet, and that scream is just a television show running in the background?
I don't think so. You'd hear other stuff, and I mean, if it's watching TV like we do, the commercial comes on, and you'd hear the music blaring all of a sudden louder than the show.
Right.
The fact that it's just that and nothing else, that's not consistent with TV shows that I'm used to watching. You'd be hearing other stuff too.
Yeah, you would have.
Now it's my turn to make a
before or after.
Right. That's what I'm thinking too. That's what I'm thinking too.
Well, and the problem that I have also is just when we're looking at, if we kind of skip to just real quick, think about what was said by Dylan, and we're matching that up against like what she heard or didn't hear. I feel like there should be some context, but between these hours, it was so loud you couldn't even handle. Everyone was partying, and then it was quiet, and then I didn't know, or then I heard someone crying. Like no one's even talking about this extraordinarily loud event. Like that's what doesn't make sense to me. It's like, why don't you have all these neighbors saying, yeah, it was the craziest party of all time. Everyone heard it. No one missed these sounds, but somehow none of these sounds happened, and they're chilling.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys caught it as well, but, and I want to play some of the other isolated. I keep saying isolated as if I isolated anything. I did not manipulate this file at all. Now I will say this for talking points later. All of these files say redacted on it. And so Moscow Police Department has done some kind of redaction on the files before they turned it over to the public records request. So was the redaction simply blurring license plates and that's the entire redaction, or did they also monkey with the audio? Now, for those who have no brains, it seems like, to think this through, Moscow Police Department is not going to insert screams that weren't there. That would only hurt their case. So they did not insert screams. You can be assured of that. So if anything, what I wonder is, could MPD or whatever have muffled the sounds of conversation so that we couldn't hear the conversations going on and just left the screams unaltered? Was that part of their forensics investigation to try to hear it, and then they made a mistake and released something that they've been manipulating to try to, during their investigation? I mean, so what I'm saying is there is a possibility that the audio has been altered, but it wasn't altered by YouTubers. I believe it was altered by the investigative team. And then the question is, what alterations were made? Before I get too far, do you guys want to make some points on that? Do you think it's a possibility in your mind that Moscow manipulated the audio in any way, shape, or form, and what would be the reasons for doing that?
I think yes. The reason I think it's possible is I try to look at every piece of evidence that comes out and try to consider how credible it is. And the issue with credibility I have, just one example of the issue of credibility I have, is that later on in this video, when you see the 2 roommates leave and then you see the 2 roommates come back, there's no audio sound. So I know that the audio was
audio there.
Right. Like there's audio. It looks like there was a conversation and that audio is gone. So if anything is moved or changed or taken out, then it's hard for me to go, well, then the rest of it's okay. Right. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's like if you're looking at a text message stream and you could go in and delete one text message, maybe the rest of it is exactly as it's supposed to be. But how am I supposed to feel confident in that? So I think it's definitely possible. And I think it's reasonable to assume that, I don't know when or where it was manipulated, but it doesn't seem like we're actually getting the accurate video, and the only redaction is those license plates.
Yeah, I'm with Sam there. And go back to the 911 call. It was very clear that they had altered that in a way that we didn't hear all of those underlying voices, all those other people in the background. So if they're doing it there, and then they're doing it in this video, just like Sam said, you can hear them talking, going out to their car. You can hear the keys jiggling. You can hear the car start. But then all of a sudden, when they're walking back in a few hours later, there's just a glitch. I think it is very clear and transparent in my mind that things are being altered or modified that may not fit with the storyline of the prosecution and the media. But then my next question is, usually in a discovery process, and I'll let Ron go into this in more in depth, if there is any redacted information, it generally has to be disclosed what redactions are made or were made and what that information is for the other side. The whole point of the Discovery Act is that nobody has information that the other side doesn't know unless it's being used as impeachment. And so I have so many questions about this whole process with the discovery.
I may be a little different from Sam and Kristen because they're both really, really smart. And there's a number of people who are involved in this when you're obtaining records and stuff. And I don't think they're quite as smart as Kristen and Sam to consider this and think this and go through that process.
But Hitler's the one authorizing it all to go out. Keep that in mind.
I'm not going to comment on him then.
Keep that in mind, because that's why it's trickling out and it's taken so many months, because he's giving the order for the information to be released in the redacted version.
Here's to me, let's say that I was involved in something, something nefarious, and I did not want this, at least unredacted video, to go out there. What I would do is make sure that the screams and stuff aren't there. I probably would find some way to erase the audio altogether rather than
lose the file or corrupt the file.
Oh, sorry, this has been corrupted. Yeah, this has been corrupted, or we don't know what happened to the audio, or just places. It's a lot easier to erase, I think, some audio than it is to muffle or to change it in any way.
Okay, but then here's my question for you, Ron. So this was it's my understanding, and I think this is the general theory, is that camera was coming from the 1112 King. So it was on their camera, their device. They turn it over. So now we have 2 people with this footage. And Lee, didn't they, after the 911 came out and then people started noticing, hey, like, this is scrubbed, didn't the PD actually come out and admit, we did modify it because we didn't, we wanted to focus on what was the most important, on all the people standing around, and their commentary, wasn't completely relevant to the 911 call. It's my understanding that there was actually an admission that was made.
I've heard that. I don't remember if I saw that, but I've heard that before as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't tell you where exactly I saw it either, but I do believe that they did come out and say, we did mute all.
And the difficulty you have is, if you know that they did some manipulation, for example, with a 911 call, is there legitimate reasons for doing it? Because they're gonna say they're protecting somebody's private information or whatever. And so, do you just have to trust them that that's what it was? But again, you would think that the defense, they might be able to tell the public that, but the defense has got to hear raw footage, unaltered, right? Because they don't have a protection to hide it from the defense, do they?
No, I don't believe so, Ron. Even if they redact it, I think they still have to. For instance, family law, Sam, tell them when we get discovery financials that are family law and they redact, account number, social security accounts, they have to tell us what that information is. They don't have to make it official for the public record, but they have to tell us what that is.
I think Idaho, under their statute, I looked at their statute a bit, and I think mostly what they have to do is identify the ground or the reason, what objection that they are making, why they're redacting it. I guess naming the statute. I don't know that they necessarily have to identify exactly what it was, but you brought up the 911 calls, because I've heard a lot of redacted 911 calls, and usually what those are is it's just blank. It's just they just cut the audio over a name or something.
Yeah, right.
Usually pretty apparent.
Right.
Yeah, this was
I
more
agree.
like they completely cut out all of the surrounding people outside of the four people that were on the call.
But
here's the million.
One thing I'd want to know about this is, what was this? Was this a Ring camera? What is the video or what does the audio normally sound like on that?
Right.
Are we hearing, because there's kind of a hollowness or distortion to all of the sounds that we're hearing on that. Is that normal, or is it something that got run through a filter to make it sound less identifiable?
And there are YouTubers like Outcast, for example, who do a lot of time with analysis that are saying, look, that they've run something over to muddy the sound of the talking, and it's clear that they've run something. So that, that's his opinion. Now, again, I'm not trying to speak to anybody's credentials, but there are people out there saying that, hey, look, I do audio for a living, and that's somebody's made attempts to muddy it so that you wouldn't tell. My question also becomes, though, about that whole, like, okay, if law enforcement did something to redact something, they have to at least explain it to somebody like the defense. But doesn't that suggest that what you're saying is that we just have to trust law enforcement? If they just tell us, hey, trust us. What we did is we just did this, and that's all. Like, we just have to trust that law enforcement always does the right thing, and that there wouldn't ever be a situation in which law enforcement would overzealously want to get somebody put away and just tell you, hey, this is what's really on there. Don't worry about it. We took care of it. Like, it seems like you still should have some accountability to prove that what they hid or redacted is what they really hid and redacted, or do they just have to assume that they're honest and above reproach?
Well, I think that the way that I look at everything is, I know that we don't have a trial in this case, but I try to look at it from the vantage point of, like, what would you do if we were proceeding with trial? And so that's, for me, where some of the gaps are, because if you have an audio and and a video, and that it's been redacted and it's potentially been altered, part of the trial, in my mind, would be making you would have an objection that they need to lay the foundation that audio is exactly what it purports to be, and that it is authentic. And I think that's where you could get into potentially a battle of the experts. In my mind, was this, I'm not an expert in it, but was this audio manipulated? If so, how? Or was it just redaction? And I think that's a big part of it, is ensuring that it's authentic. So then when it's kind of passed to us in the public, it's obviously really concerning, considering the timeline and the story that the prosecution has shown. But I just have a hard time saying, I'm just going to trust this, when even watching it, I see that there's a gap in audio. Like, and I know I can't even plug my phone in until this thing dies. Okay. So I'm the worst person.
True story.
It's true. Very true. So I'm the worst person at technology that's ever existed in this world. But it just, from a common sense perspective, it's very hard for me to go, I'll just trust. Like, to Ron's point, like, no one would be that stupid to try to manipulate it. Why wouldn't you just take everything out? I think it's a good point. But then I'm also sitting there thinking, well, but what if the original was much worse? What if tailed down and they thought this would pass everyone's smell test? Like, people believe their own BS, especially if they're messing around with stuff. Maybe they thought that this was like A++ work, and it just wasn't.
No, and if it wasn't for Jules getting this and being so persistent with the FOIA, and not just, filling out the form, but calling and following up and emailing and holding them accountable. If this was helpful to them, this would have been released out and given to the mass public 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
But
Great point. Yeah.
It took more than 3 years to get this.
And I think I
don't trust anybody. I assume everybody is lying in our cases, and we start from there, especially with AI now. I mean, I assume that everything is altered.
Yeah.
I think we've got a couple levels of possible redaction here too, because these were released through the judge, and he has a specific role regarding how to redact. He's looking specifically for privacy issues, maybe things that are crime scene if they're too gruesome, things like that. But we don't know what redactions have been made by him versus what may have been altered previously. The other thing is we can't think of law enforcement here as just one single entity. There are, if somehow law enforcement is involved in this, or somebody in law enforcement is involved in this in a way that they want to hide something, I don't think that's going to involve everybody in the entire chain of custody of this or availability, who has this available, or who is involved in the production of it. And so it very well may be that these requests for records go to somebody else that's not necessarily a cop or a bad actor. So it is very possible that somebody completely unrelated to whatever is being hidden is the one who's involved in doing this. So the issue would be how, if someone's trying to hide something, how involved can they make themselves in that process?
Right.
Yeah. And
those are great points.
Yeah. I think it's hard to figure out who did it, right? Like we don't know necessarily, but Ron, to your point, like if you're just kind of taking your example and isolating out like the role of the judge to exclude otherwise private information, sensitive or gruesome information, my problem going back to the trust thing is I think we can all agree, and I definitely know Kristen and Ron as attorneys can agree that judges interpret things differently, even if they're acting within their discretion. Mm-hmm. And there's many times that I go ask for an order from a court, and one judge will say that's reasonable, and the other judge will say that's a violation of privacy. Go away, counsel. So that's also a concern, is at what point does that discretion become something that is maybe surpassing what would be reasonable for redaction?
Yeah. Well, I will say, I want to, it's like we could talk forever about all the nuances. We'll never get to this video. This is what I do, right? I just break so I want to wax a little bit on my fundamental flaw with our prosecution system in the first place, which is that from the point that law enforcement makes the arrest, oftentimes prosecution and law enforcement work hand in hand to then get the conviction of the person that they've arrested for the thing. And it becomes an issue of confirmation bias. They make the determination who they think did it. They make the arrest. And then everything from that point forward becomes a matter of proving that the person they arrested did it, kind of thing. And it's not, I feel like we just do that a little too heavy handed. So did things happen in redactions, for example, of, well, this doesn't help the case at all to have us hear this other thing, because that's going to lead to somebody thinking it didn't happen. And we know who did it. So we've got to, like, how much do people get blinded by we know who did it already, so now let's just redact everything out that doesn't help that case? That's question number one. Number two, I was going to say one more thing about redactions, and I made this comment. I don't know how it applies to audio, but one thing that I read, armchair chat GPT warrior, it's legal, for example, to put a black box over something or blur something in an image where everyone is clear that something's being redacted, and it's an open thing. When you're looking at it, something's been redacted. What's not allowed to happen, it's illegal to fundamentally change reality, like use AI tools to remove something from the scene that was actually there, or put something in the scene that wasn't there. That's different than putting a black box or a shading over everything. So if we, for example, muddy audio, is that fundamentally altering reality? It's not letting people, it's not obvious to people that something's being blurred or smudged or whatever. So how does that play in for audio, or do you have any clue of whether that kind of rule applies to the audio and manipulation?
I would have to look it up, but that, I mean, just like Sam was saying, if I was questioning somebody about a video, and obviously you're going to want to ask the person directly who uses the camera, has access to the camera, bought the camera, and you want to make sure that the first question you ask is is it authentic? Has it been altered, modified, changed? Other than volume, it's being modified. And I that is not a black box redaction. So like when we get financial documents, the account number or the social security number is a black box redaction. It is clear. We know what's being redacted and why it's being redacted. But when you have an audio, if you are removing voices from that audio, it is no longer authentic, in my opinion. Ron?
Yeah, and if we're looking at this as a judicial, the judge doing the redaction, he has a responsibility to weigh the First Amendment, the right of people to know this, to have this information, with whatever protected interests there are. So he has to, a couple of things he has to do. He has to at least identify the category of what he is protecting, what he is redacting. And he also has a responsibility to make it narrowly tailored so that he is redacting only as much as needs to be redacted under that. I would venture that if they had, or if at least the judge had authorized a partial redaction of the audio, that should have been identified when the records were released.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm learning to try to become a legal writing guy. And so when I'm asking for public records, I'm saying things like you just said, which is that if you have redacted something or whatever, please cite the guidance that you used and what the ruling was on why you redacted that portion, so that we can understand what informed your position to redact that portion.
And
so
please
that's
identify each and every redaction that you have made, starting with line 1 through blah blah blah. You want to be so specific. But look, at even on TikTok, you have to check that box. And Instagram, if you're using AI, you have to check that box that says that you are using AI to create your content. So I don't know all the Idaho codes, but just based on that, if we have to do it for social media, and if you don't, there can be violations on TikTok. Then if you are adding, you are not only making it inauthentic, but you have to let the other side know, or the judge should let the public know, what is being enhanced or minimized or modified with AI.
Yeah. So, when I provided you my letter that I filed with the Attorney General's office asking for, for them to open a criminal investigation into possible mishandling of this case and hiding of exculpatory information, of course they can say no, but we're, hopefully we'll get some traction on it. I provided them a table with some timestamps, and I wanted to talk through some of these timestamps with you. One of the things I want to ask you off the top of your head, if you've heard, I don't know if you heard my analysis where I broke down what I thought I heard after you listened to the raw feed, but one of the things I felt, and I just want to see if you guys think it passes your sniff test, did it sound like there was kind of general partying noise going on, and then it was within 40 seconds to 50 seconds after the noise, that whole neighborhood gets creepily quiet. It's almost as if people heard the scream, people were like telling people to quiet down, and the neighborhood got really quiet. I don't know if you felt that or not, but there was a change, it seemed like, from the activity around the neighborhood after the scream. Within 40 seconds of the scream, everything kind of got quiet in the neighborhood. Did you guys feel that or not?
I did, because I don't think it was partying. I think it was an incident. Yeah. I think that's why you have a chilling silence, because everyone's going, what was going on? I mean, presumably even just in a party college town, there are people that are likely still awake or would easily wake because of the close proximity of the house to, the next house. Like, there's a lot of people there. It's heavily populated, and all of a sudden it's dead silent. Well, when do you normally hear stuff be dead silent? I mean, just think about being in an office, a loud bang. Say you're in a restaurant, someone breaks a dish, everyone stops. That doesn't normally happen when there's just general partying and someone like wins a game of beer pong. Like that doesn't cause the chill. So could I be wrong? Sure, it's just my opinion, but it seems like something like that those noises were chilling enough that people went, uh-oh, the same way. I don't want to minimize it and say the restaurant example, but I mean, everyone's seen a server walk by, right, and drop their stuff, and everyone goes and turns around and looks, and there's like a moment of silence. That's how it felt for me.
Yeah. And that's how it felt for me too. But I'm always like, it's a subjective thing, right? So that's how it felt to me. But I wanted to know if you guys felt that at all. Now, here's where I'm going with this. I've isolated in some really distinct screams, and I'm thinking maybe we should highlight those first, because there's other places in between where I say if you really listen, you can hear muffled voices and what sounds like distress in the background. Those are harder to hear. So you guys want to focus real quick on the more obvious ones, and then maybe if we have time, we'll go into some of those not so obvious ones. All right. So let me see if I can find another obvious one. So I'm going to jump forward in this video. I'm going to put it on screen to 2:38:10, if we can get as close as we can. 2:38. I'm looking at the timestamp in the corner. 2:38. Oops, 8. 2:38:4. Okay, that's close enough. So at 2:38, 2 o'clock in the morning, 38 minutes after and 10 seconds, to about 2:38:19, so about 9 seconds, I believe that you hear more screams indicative of terror and pain, and what sounds like more than one female voice. So again, if you're not listening with headphones, it may be harder to hear this than if you have headphones on, but let's do our best to listen through this. It actually continues for quite a while through 2:42:25. All through this is portion that I'm going to play through 2 minutes and 42 minutes after, or 2 hours and 42 minutes after. You can hear screams of pain. It sounds like there's a struggle going on. There's male voices, female voices. Just listen carefully to see if you hear what sounds like things going on in the background that is indicative of terror or pain. All right. I'm going to pause for a moment because those dead spaces in between are a lot longer than time wise. It doesn't feel on the clock. It doesn't look like much, but it's a long way. You're just sitting here. There are noises. I don't know if you guys can hear it on an external speaker, but there are noises going on. You can hear a little rustling and stuff like that going on. And if you really listen carefully, there's stuff going on there, but some stuff jumps out. So I'm going to play it all the way through. If you guys are okay, all the way through 2:43. All right. So we're going to keep playing this. All right, I had us muted there a little bit so that our own breathing and stuff wouldn't show up over top of that. For me, that's difficult to listen to, but maybe my active imagination's running away with me. Does it not sound like a struggle going on and weird screams and shit going on? I mean, what do you guys think?
100% sounds like a struggle. And
That's not a party.
yeah, that's not. I was even trying to think, like, even when you put the caption that it maybe they're, I do think, yeah, they're trying to mask it, but even at the mask, it does not sound like a party. It sounds to me like there's torture going on. It sounds to me like somebody might be watching someone else get tortured. There's definitely more than one suspect there. I'll tell you that.
Right? Yeah. Right? I mean, there's a moment, and again, like, this is what's difficult. I realize our minds can play tricks on us and we can start building a narrative, right? Because the mind's designed to try to understand what's happening. So you start telling yourself a story. But it sounds to me like amid all that struggle and screaming, somebody decides to start having everybody hoop and holler like they're trying to mask the sound of what's going on. And at some point, someone says, stop, 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 as if they're telling them either to stop shouting or somebody else is saying, stop hurting me, whatever the case may be. Like, your mind can run away with it, but there's just weird shit. And then after this, that kind of chanting, which to me sounds fake, with the whole USA, whatever the hell they're doing, like it literally sounds like a bunch of guys. And again, that would lead to multiple perps. A bunch of guys are trying to mask the sound, what's going on, and then it dies out, and then you hear another horrific, what sounds like a genuine terror scream after they stop chanting over top of it. So it's just, that's my analysis of what I'm hearing. But what do you guys hear?
Here's my problem. My problem is, apparently no one heard anything, but a house picks up all this audio. It sounds pretty horrific. There's quite a few screams that sound like they're from different individuals. And this all occurs way earlier than the actual crime occurred. And we're to believe that this happened. And then we're also to believe that then everyone went to bed, and then coincidentally, the real incident happened, and then coincidentally, no one called 911 for 8+ hours, and then coincidentally, people weren't really investigated, and then so it just starts, to me, it's like, I mean, I don't know what to make of that, but I agree with Ron with, like, I'd like to see that Ring doorbell for like a week or two before and just watch it through the night. I'm willing to bet, although I don't know, I'm interested to see that those aren't normal sounds. And then I think my other question is, of course, I would never be able to identify anyone, but is there anyone out there that knows the sound of any of these voices or screams? I mean,
yeah,
there's maybe some of it is unintelligible, but I feel like it's possible someone could kind of identify, no, that's the sound of Ethan, for example. If it is, I don't know, or that's the sound of so-and-so. Like, you would think someone could identify something or someone. Like, if Kristen was screaming, I think I could identify that.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not TV. There's no way in absolute hell that if Bethany and Dylan were in that house that they didn't hear it. There's absolutely no way in hell. It's just not physically possible. Or anyone else that was in that house. That is a group of people. You can identify multiple different tones, sounds with respect to, I mean, it's almost like I hear a little bit of coughing or what sounds like choking, and then you hear the screaming. I hear female and male voices. Again, I would listen to this 150 times. Then my next step, if I was an attorney on this case, is handling 5 different experts and having them each independently give me back what they believe. Analysis. That's really how you have a better understanding, because you are right. I can tell you, it sounds to me like I'm hearing specific words. It sounds to me like that is a group of people. And to add on what Sam said, not only does that blow up their complete storyline and their timeline, it's my understanding that there is evidence that would vindicate BK from being anywhere near this residence during this time period. I believe he was still at his apartment, correct?
Correct.
So we're just supposed to believe that all of these isolated incidences or just neglectful investigations are just isolated, and it makes a lot of people just lose complete credibility with the integrity of this case.
Do we know if any of the residents of 1112 or that greenhouse across the street were interviewed and statements taken, what they may have heard?
Right.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know that we know. Like looking through the files, I don't see that specifically. You never, what you don't see, and I've read a ton. You don't see anybody, officers asking anybody, did you hear these sounds at this particular night? There's no follow-up on that whatsoever. I do want to ask Ron, since you're an appeals kind of guy. I told people this at the beginning when people were asking, like, well, maybe, some people would say, well, maybe Bryan Kohberger took a plea deal because he's thinking he's getting an appeal. And other people are like, well, you're an idiot. He literally waived all appeals. And then I said, it's kind of in between the two, because even in a plea deal, if it comes out later that you physically could not have done what they said you did, then your appeal's not for shit. You can plead guilty to something if it's impossible for you to have done the crime, i.e., if the crimes happened right now and Kohberger was in Pullman, Washington, not here, then his plea is off the table, even if he waived all his rights to appeal. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And that's something, any exculpatory evidence that comes out afterward, even after a plea deal, particularly if the lack of that being available to you affected your plea. Oh, absolutely. He could, both on state level and through federal habeas corpus. It would be available if there is clear exculpatory evidence. Absolutely.
And I don't, this is that question I ask. I don't understand how this can't be exculpatory. I don't understand how it wouldn't, because the idea of exculpatory means that it would undermine the prosecution's case. How does this not all day long undermine the prosecution's case that maybe the crimes didn't happen at 4 a.m, maybe they happened at 2:30 a.m, when Bryan Kohberger had an alibi because they literally said his cell phone was still at his house in Pullman, Washington?
Well, that Anne got this evidence. This is all theoretical. That Anne got this Ring camera audio, didn't object to it not being authentic, didn't pursue any further requests with respect to the audio. And I'm not saying she did this, but if she was aware of all of this and they still took the plea deal, Ron, that was going to be my follow-up question to you. It's one thing if this didn't exist at the time that the plea deal or the case was going along, and it didn't exist, and all of a sudden this just magically came out in the last couple months. Is that different than somebody completely withholding it and his attorney or him, they never saw it, they never got it?
I think it's just two different paths of getting there. If it's ineffective assistance of counsel, that's one thing. If it was exculpatory evidence that was withheld by the prosecution, that's another thing. But both would give you a path, I think, to get there.
Especially because isn't this like, you hear the saying like wrong place, wrong time, but it's like, but we now have a totally different time, and Bryan would be in the wrong place at the wrong time when this incident happened. So
right. And
that's pretty persuasive that there's not, it's getting out of the reasonable doubt realm. Even it's just like,
no, I agree.
Around.
Yeah,
I think this blows up there. I truly think that this timeline puts some very, very, very big problems in their case.
Yeah, I may not be a criminal defense attorney, but I do litigate things like domestic violence cases, and I do use video and audio evidence as part of that. And frankly, if I had this video with the screams happening at a time that I knew my client was in Pullman, Washington, and not here, even though I don't, it's a completely different standard of burden of evidence, burden of proof, is even with a more likely than not, if I'm trying to defend against a finding that it was more likely than not even up to the level of a criminal proceeding, I would be highlighting this video. Here's these screams. You hear screams at this time. I don't know what they are. I don't have to know what they are.
Right. But that's just it. You don't have to know what it is.
That my client supposedly was there is nothing.
Right. There's two separate parts to it. It's who did it, but also could you plausibly meet your burden to warrant a conviction? But my other problem is that a lot of I can't say a lot of the evidence, but of the little evidence in my mind that points to BK, part of that is associated with his cell phone. So my problem is you can't just use it when those facts make sense and then just totally ignore that if the time frame changes, those facts no longer make sense. It's no longer evidence which would support a conviction. It's actually evidence that would support an exoneration in my mind.
Yeah,
So,
I think there's a lot of that going on, Sam. I think there's a lot of, hey, we're going to use this audio here and now because it supports our theory, our timeline, our description, everything. But hey, remember, we wouldn't have this if Jules didn't get it, right? This was not something we came out and said, hey, I truly believe that I don't know that we would have ever saw this, to be honest. And
yeah, right. This is great that she put the pressure on there and didn't take no for an answer, and that made them cough it up. And I don't think they ever intended this to come out to the public. And they're I would imagine people are doing some damage control on the backside. Like, oh shit, now that's out there, how do we now they're going to have to, I don't know what they're going to have to do. I don't want to speculate.
No,
Let me say
agree
this.
with you, Lee. And then they also say, okay, we connect his phone, what 22 times or something over 3 months. And so we have him there. Well, what if his phone in no way, shape, no how was connected to any ping anywhere near Moscow at that time because he was in Pullman? And I don't think they would come out and say that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I want to say, I actually have four more isolated screams I want to share. We're not even done with the screamings right here. This is a long period, right? So I want to play those last 4, but this is an appellate kind of question. Let me give you a crazy scenario. Let's say Brian Kohberger. Okay, where am I going? If you were paying attention, right? They said it came out in hearings, pretrial hearings, that there was evidence of a cleanup. Dylan Mortensen, under investigation, even said, I don't think you're going to find the suspect's DNA because we cleaned up. And it kind of was like a shocker moment. Like, what did she just say? She literally said, I don't think you're going to find it because we cleaned up. And the officer's like, what do you mean cleaned up? Oh, well, it was Parents' Weekend. We were cleaning up. You're like, yeah, but wouldn't that be before the murders? Oh, yeah, it was before the murders. And I'm like, right there, you're like, what the hell did you just admit that there was a cleanup? And they said there was evidence of a cleanup. So
in one of their investigation reports, so it was one of the detectives, right? He said there is clear evidence that there was a cleanup of the crime scene. And I think he even uses the word bleach. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they even say that there was evidence that bleach was used.
So let me ask you this crazy scenario. Brian Kohberger didn't do the killings. He's got an alibi. He was in Pullman, Washington, but he was part of the cleanup crew. And when the murders were done, they asked Brian Kohberger to come over and help clean up the scene because he's a forensics specialist and he knows how to clean up crime scenes. So now the officers know Brian Kohberger was there at the house. And they figure, good enough. We got a guy that we know is in the house and we don't have other people we can go after. So we'll just pin it on this guy. Is that a scenario that's even plausible in your mind that could have gone that way?
That's what I think is more likely to have happened than what the official story is.
So what does that do to Brian Kohberger when accessory to murder is still a crime punishable by, the same thing? Like, what does that do to Brian Kohberger's plea deal if he didn't do it, but he's an accessory to murder and he's already in jail how does that affect that?
Well, I don't know that accessory to murder gets you the death penalty. I'm not sure about that. And my feeling, and I think others share this, is that the plea deal was primarily to avoid the death penalty. Yeah. So there certainly would be a lesser sentence, I would think, but this really points to me to something a lot broader than that. Somebody's got something on him, is what I think.
Whether it's a threat, whether it's evidence, whether it's a family, I agree with you. It makes the most sense.
Yeah, well, and I do think. I mean, we've talked about. I think you guys and I talked about this last time we were together. It could be the mother pleading with her son. You're getting an unfair trial. Don't take the plea deal because I want to have at least time with you. That could be an option. It could have been threat to the family or himself. I'm going to kill your entire. If this was a group of people that tied up people and tortured and killed them over time in front of people, they're the same kind of people who would do that to your family. So if somebody said to him,
would do that in jail,
same thing's going to happen to you. Yep. So did he take the plea out of fear for his family's life and for his own life because he's going to get killed in prison and his family's going to get killed out? There's a lot of things that, again, I feel like it's so frustrating to hear people that have the mentality, nobody pleads guilty to something they didn't do. I can't believe that people still don't fundamentally understand all the ways that a person would plead guilty to something they didn't do to avoid getting executed or their family being killed or them being killed. There's a million reasons why people do that. Or an unfair trial where they realize they're going down for it no matter what. And a plea is better than, the ultimate punishment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think that, we really shouldn't minimize the potential fear that someone would have considering it's a quadruple homicide. That's like one of the most horrific things that can happen. So I think to act like no one's in fear for their life, no one could possibly be in fear for their life or their family's life, I don't think that that's really thought totally through. And I think that when you look at the possible scenarios, what I'm trying to do is I agree with you, like everyone has a little bit of bias built in. And so, you kind of want to get on this, like, well, I think I'm figured it out, or, but I think it's important to keep trying to follow the evidence. And when you're trying to follow the evidence and you're following the timeline, like that new potential that maybe he was involved, but was part of a cleanup crew. It's like, well, that fits more in line with the evidence. Is it what happened? I don't know, but that fits more in line with the timestamps when maybe he was arguably in the area. It could provide a better explanation than what we have, because the current explanation that there was horrific screaming while he was nowhere to be found does not jive.
And I don't want to go. Sorry, Ron, you had something there on top of your head?
I was just gonna say, imagine you're an author or a screenwriter, and you wrote a murder mystery, and you took it, and it was this guy completely unrelated to any of the people in the house, came to the house and murdered 4 people by stabbing them over and over and over and again, but nobody heard anything, even people in the house. The publisher or the producer would look at you and say, no, that's just
not a believable story.
Yeah.
Right. I've said that before. Like, yeah, nobody would believe it. They'd be like, that's too far fetched. Like,
no, and I want to be clear that we don't know that BK was involved whatsoever. We're throwing around potential theories. Right. I have not drawn any conclusions. With respect to the DNA, it is possible he was never, ever, ever, ever there through the test DNA.
I think, Kristen, you're right. And here's the thing that bothers this. I think you're probably right. The problem is like, I think the reason why I have to entertain the idea of, okay, how can it be both?
I entertain it too, personally, just so you know.
And the reason I have to is because it would bother me so fundamentally that a man is going to be in life in prison and possibly beaten and killed in prison or whatever the case may be, and completely innocent. Like, there's a part of me that wants to believe he had some kind of involvement, just so I can sleep a little better but at the end of the day, if there's an innocent man sitting there that had nothing to do with it, God, it's hard to wrestle with that.
It's terrible. And devil's advocate, like you did yesterday, no pun intended. You have to, that's what being an attorney is. That's what being a critical thinker, that's what being analyzing the facts situation. It's always looking, okay, maybe the puzzle piece does not support that he did this, but maybe it does support based on the pings, or it does support on the timeline that this is possible. And then you continue to work through all of those different theories until the evidence sways one way or the other. The problem in this case is the more evidence that comes out, the more detached it makes BK look from at least the unalivings, in my opinion. But I don't think any of the three of us have really come to a conclusion and said we can say for certainty that we believe he was part of it in any way, shape, or form. And I know you were talking a little bit last night on your show about the felony murder rule. And yes, that generally is when somebody, when people conspire to commit a crime and then someone's killed in the commission of the felony. But you have to look at how many times you get 3 people that go down for the same crime, but they all had different roles. Generally, their sentencing is different.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So let's. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
I was just gonna say, no one really knows what happened, but if there's a lot of evidence that shows that the timeline isn't right, my concern is if he was involved or not involved, are there other people that were involved? That is a huge problem too.
1,000%.
Right. That and if you watch my show, I know you guys do watch a lot of my stuff. I say that all the time. The other part that bugs me is the other killers might be walking free. If we hear a group, what looks like a group of people, multiple males that may be involved in trying to cover it up, they all get to walk free and be on the streets, and maybe be murderers that are walking on the streets because we just took the easy route out. And it wasn't even all that easy. It took a while to get Koberger down.
Yeah, but they had it in their vision that was their conclusion, and then I think a lot of the evidence was forced and molded to support that conclusion, whether or not it was justified or not.
Yeah, and we also know this is not a story. This is not a movie. This is not a book. We know it happened. That's what we have here. So if there are circumstances that are a plot hole in this story, that's not just a plot hole that maybe somebody will ignore. I mean, it means that there is another explanation that takes everything into account. If it seems very improbable or impossible in real life, then that means there's another explanation.
Yeah.
And I think we all forget that these were real victims.
Yeah.
Real people. And I even do it to myself. We get so caught up in going down rabbit holes. And, you know, you want to remember that these were these were 4 college kids at the prime of their life. And this was so incredibly tragic. And I always try to put that. But I will say, listening to these videos, it really brought up a lot of those initial feelings that we all felt, you know, even not knowing them, but just seeing these pictures so full of life, so much ahead of them. It's crazy to me that I'm wondering how I would feel. No, actually, I think I know how I'd feel if this was someone that was close to me hearing these screams. You have to take a step back and say, did we get this right? Did they get this right?
Right. And there's a part of me. So what I want to do is I do want to quickly play these 4 clips real quick before we run out of time. So we have time to talk about all the stuff at the end. Along your lines, there's a part of me that says, God, I hope the families don't listen to all this stuff, right? Because it's got, if you do believe that's happening, how horrific would it be for them to have to relive that and start to imagine, is that what happened? Was that my kid that just screamed? Like, I can't, like, it makes me emotional talking about it. I can't even imagine. So hopefully they're not listening, but the rest of us, I think we want to get it right. And so we're going to have to pour through that. So hopefully the families will tune this stuff out while we work on it. That's my mentality, because it's got to be difficult for them. Let's listen to a few more isolated things, and then we'll finish up with all of the thoughts that you might have and other things. There's things we didn't even talk about cars coming and going from the scene, maybe Jack DeCoeur. People said that they think his car pulls in. We'll talk about that kind of stuff at the end for whatever time you guys have left. But let's listen to a few more isolated pieces. I'm going to go to 2:49 and 21. 2:49. And it's close to, there we go. So starting at 2:49:21. So it's going to roll for a couple seconds. And then 2:49. Do I have it right? Oh, 21. 2:49:21. I'm too far ahead. 2:49. There we go. So let me give it a little before that. There we go. That's probably too far. It's really hard to do that. But there we go. Good enough. So 2:49:11. So when it gets to 2:49:21, you should hear some screams also, and that should last some sounds of screaming perhaps at 2:49:56. And then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to some more, and then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to some more and jump ahead. So understand where I'm going to truncate some of this a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and mute all of our microphones so that our breathing and stuff doesn't go over top of that. All right, now I'm going to leave you guys muted just to let you know what I'm doing. So that was a portion. I'm going to jump ahead now to 2:52 and 27 seconds, as close to that as possible. 2:52 and 27, so that's pretty close. All right. And then I'm going to jump ahead to 2:57:28. Understand a lot of this stuff is pretty faint. If you isolate it, or not if you isolate, if you put noise canceling headphones on, it really jumps off for you. If you know what if you can hear it. 2:57:28. There was a really weird noise here. I haven't been able to figure out what it is, but I'm going to play it and let you kind of struggle with it when we get done here. All right. There was what kind of sounded like wailing and then a loud bang after that. And then I'm going to do my last piece at 3:07 and 23 seconds. (3:07:16). So at 3:07 and 23 seconds is what we're looking for. All right, I'm going to unmute everybody's mic and bring us on the stage. So I understand that those later portions are a little harder to hear, but once that first blood-curdling scream happens and the whole neighborhood gets quiet, that's part of the story, right? It's eerily quiet, and then all you hear is what, and again, maybe overactive imagination, sounds of struggle, slamming, thumping, wailing, screams, terror, people shouting over things, trying to hide. Me, it's compelling. It's a compelling story that something horrific is happening in the distance somewhere that's being picked up by the camera. So what are you guys' thoughts on all that?
Definitely sounds like things are being thrown or people are being, shoved up against a wall, but it illustrates a visual story for me.
I have a question.
Okay.
And maybe I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. Do we have that audio up and through the time of the alleged murder? Like that same front door ring camera? Do we have that up and through?
Yes, because that's when the girls return. The roommates return. Or was it around 5:15 or so?
So then my question is there any noise during the time that the prosecution is saying that this happened?
No, that's the thing. I mean, the sounds that you would expect to hear during the time of the killings, you don't hear that. That's the thing. And it would be great. Like, we need to get that. Like, we need to get that footage and play it to say this is what it sounds like from 4:05 to 4:20.
The unalivings happened. All four of them in 8 minutes. This is when it happened. It was the quietest thing possible.
Right. And then right. And then even just to position that with what they said. Now the story comes out. Kaylee was fighting back. Maddie was fighting back. Xana was fighting back. Maybe she was singing and dancing and going up the stairs. Like, where's all that going to be on the sound, right? Where's all that going to be on the sound? So it just, the whole thing stinks. It doesn't make any sense to a logical mind. So I'm still trying to struggle. Like, how are we even having this discussion? Like, why has this not been out already? How are we having this discussion today?
And I've been trying to look and find what the reports are out there, because I'm a little late to this than the rest of you. But what reports are there of what was going on during this time? And I can't find any record of anybody who said anything really was going on.
Well, so Stacy Chapin, there's not a whole lot mentioned. The girls were allegedly dropped back at somewhere near King Road, but not at the actual residence from the Grubhub truck a little after 2, right, Lee?
Yeah. Dylan Mortensen stated everyone was back at the house by 2:00 in the morning. So
okay, so give or take those. And then Stacy Chapin said in some documentary something very, very early on that 2:00 was the dark hour, right?
Yeah.
Well, now it's understanding, but it's just crazy because
and again,
where's the firecracker or whatever Bethany heard? Why don't we hear that on?
Right. I don't think it was. I don't think it was terribly loud. I don't think it was terribly loud, anyways. And I do think there's some flashes I point out in the video. And if you looked at my long analysis, or some flashes that could potentially be what she saw. She heard what was a firecracker and saw a flash. Well, there's a couple of distinct flashes that show up in the video. So it was that it. And keep in mind, I've mentioned this in my video. If these murders did happen at 2-something in the morning, now we're not talking about the girls not calling 911 for 8 hours. We're talking about them not calling 911 for 10 hours. That's another thing you got to keep in mind.
Probably watched Titanic, as Sam says, 4 times. Not 3, 4. Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems. And again, the word exculpatory evidence just keeps popping off in my head. How is this not the two things? How is this not exculpatory? How does this not undermine the prosecution's timeline all day, every day, and twice on Sunday, as Hitler would say? And two, where was these kind of sounds during the time frame that the murders are supposed to happen? And those are bugging me tremendously in this case.
Lee, what was, and sorry for everyone watching, we know a lot. I just don't know everything down to the minute yet. What was the time that the Banfield boys were being interviewed by the undercover cop? Well, what
I want to say it was like 3:15 or something like that, or somewhere around 3:15. It ties into the time, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Exiting the scene.
When you go back and you start thinking about a different timeline, because we truly have been brainwashed, if this is not the right timeline, for 3 years, that this was it without question, transparency. It happened from 4 to 4:30, somewhere in those exact minutes, right?
Yep.
The DoorDash, everything. If you start going back and applying it with this theory that it was during this time, and you go back and you start watching old videos, it is wild what you start putting together.
Correct. It does. In fact, you could get really crazy and you can start looking at the grub truck video and you can start seeing what looks like people chanting Xana and Ethan and they're watching phones. Were people really watching the murder, or is there any scenario like that? Did then kids run away from the scene? That's who gets picked up at the Banfield.
That's what I was just saying.
There's just a million things that all of a sudden start to tie together. Yeah, they're running, right? Are they running away from the crime scene? Like, I mean, there's a million. And here's the thing, like, I tend to try to avoid isolated, enhanced YouTuber, and I'm a YouTuber, but I don't trust YouTubers manipulating video and audio, so I tend to shy away from it. You know, when I love Birdie, but I also tend to shy away when Birdie's like, "Hey Lee, I just saw something. Check this out." And I'm like, "You tweaked the video. Like, I don't know how far I can go down the." But here's the thing: when this audio was released, people were like, you know, DA, you're an idiot. This we've known about this for forever because you can hear it on the Linda Lane thing. And I'm like, that's the problem. You can hear it on other cameras, which validates those sounds are real. They've been out there for a long time. The problem is YouTubers had to isolate the sounds and pull it up so you could hear it better. But they're there and they're caught on other things. That's how loud that was. So again,
the chanting sounds it sounds similar, but I think it's more clear. I think the chanting is more clear on the Linda Lane. But I agree. I think
closer, maybe. Yeah.
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 But I think it's reinforcing and supporting. If you take all the individual evidence out and you start putting it together, it's hard to ignore. Ron, what was that brain thinking over there? Because I know you're like, if you were thinking about an appeal and all of this stuff was coming out, how would you even start? Because I think about that and I get super overwhelmed.
Yeah. This video, if this was not available to the defense, if this was not made available to the defense, I would be screaming to the court about this. This is exculpatory to me.
Right. And wouldn't that fall, Ron, under maybe at the federal level of basically a constitutional violation of a fair trial? Like, he didn't get a fair trial. This should be a civil liberties issue.
Yeah, and there would probably be some remedy under Idaho's state statute as well, either post-trial or an appeal. So then I go back to, if this was available, what's the explanation? Why was it not used? Why did they still plead guilty when there's this? I mean, you've got the time when especially when he was not there. He was in Pullman at this time.
Right.
I've thought about that too. I can't get around that either.
The silence at 4 is just deafening.
I just imagine like being the defense attorney and putting on the evidence, the video and audio of this very noisy, horrific screaming and showing like on a demonstrative map where DK is at the time, and then pausing and showing exhibit B and having it just be the 8-minute, whatever time period that the murders allegedly had, and have it just be totally silent. Like,
right. And
by scream.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If I don't know how it works. I'm not a defense attorney, but let me lay this out. If I was a defense attorney, if I heard those screams at 2 a.m. on tape, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to bring that shit up to a jury. I want them to hear that. Right. And even even if the prosecution and law enforcement says I can explain what those screams are, I would want the jury to hear it and let them make that determination. Say, here's what they say it is, but here's why I think it might be something else. So and let the jury decide. You would still put that in front of a jury, even if they had an explanation for it, wouldn't you?
And I really want to hear what the explanation is. I mean, if we're wrong about this, I want to know why and what that was. What was going on at that time, and why is there no other record of the things that would lead to these sorts of screams and this noise?
And why was it never released until recently with a very persistent YouTuber? If there was nothing to hide, if there was nothing to keep, if nothing nefarious, why did it take 3 years and multiple attempts and $1,000+ or however much Jules played? Why did it take all of this for us to get it?
Yeah, and I think that there's the problem is that there's very serious questions regarding each piece of evidence that is supposedly squarely pointing to BK. And I think, Booking with B brought up that great point recently about how when you look at that footage that we were just looking at, you can't really tell the color of anything.
Right.
We're looking at that
footage. Not even the pumpkins.
The pumpkins look white.
Right, they look white, yeah.
The greenhouse looks white. Yeah. So now is the white car not white? Like, okay, so then take that one out. We already know the issues with the DNA. We already know the issues with the interviews and the investigation. So it's like each piece of evidence I'm finding reasonable doubt. And honestly, sometimes I'm really unreasonable, but me plus a whole jury of people, I don't know that you would get people in there actually walking away without reasonable doubt.
And let me point out,
I played DA here, and like Devil's Advocate said, when he went to Moscow and he said the very firm uniform decision of people that live there is that he did it.
He did it. Yeah, no question.
That's what we believe, and we are convicted in that belief. So it's like almost like there's so much brainwash that people don't have the ability to objectively look at this.
I think that's a great point, Kristen, and I would counter that point with the idea that it doesn't mean that much to me that one person would speak for like a group of people whom aren't being asked the same question, who aren't being sat down in a trial, being carefully provided with evidence in front of a jury of your peers and admissible evidence with experts, and then thoughtfully coming to that decision, because that's how we're supposed to convict people.
That's the key word, supposed.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have a whole lot of faith in our jury system. Is a problem.
Sure, but I'm just saying, if someone says, "Yeah, we all think you did it," it's like, okay, well, but give me a trial. Let me put you in that seat and tell me that you're going to come to that conclusion at the end of it. And I'm not certain that somebody who would make a statement like that really would. And maybe I'm totally wrong. But that's my concern.
The people who live there in Moscow, they want this to be true because they want the guy caught.
Right.
They want to know the guy's caught. They don't. It's terrifying to think that whoever did it is still out there, and so it makes you feel. Imagine the relief. Let's say you're at a school, or your kids are at school, and something happened. Someone went and did something, and you heard about it, and then you hear, oh, they got the guy. Oh, the relief is, good, my kid's safe. That's what I want to believe. You don't want to believe that they got the wrong person and somebody still is out there and.
They also want people out of their area. They're over the invasion of the privacy. The people like us that want to drive through. But I think that's also why they're quoting YouTubers like Lee, 20,000 in excess. I'm sorry. I even read when I read their response to you, Lee, it wasn't 20,000.
In excess of 20,000.
In excess of 20,000, which means that could have been 40, 50, 60,000.
Right. That's just where they're going to start.
A few times, and it wasn't 20,000. It clearly said in excess of 20,000. But
and other YouTubers got that same letter. Other YouTubers were reading that same letter after I was reading. They were reading their copy of the same letter. Like, that's the letter I got too. That in excess of 20,000.
They never expected for the public or YouTube to take such a huge interest in this case. I think that they thought this was going to be a super easy, wash our hands. We got the guy. And I also think that if Ann Taylor wasn't so strong with we're gonna prove to you he didn't do this, we're gonna prove to you he's gonna be exonerated, all the way up until the 11th hour, and it goes back to BK saying, was I the only one arrested from you know, after he was taken into custody. It's like there's just so much to turn to. But Ron, I want to get in that brain of yours. What if you were looking at this from a state level, an appellate level, federal level, all of these things? What would you attack first?
Well, one, I'd want to know what was given to the defense.
And how do you get that?
Well, if I'm appealing, then I represent the defendant and I would have access to that. And so that's part of the difficulty that we have, is he apparently has no interest in appealing this, at least that we've seen right now. But
maybe because he's afraid for his life to do so, right?
Yeah. So sorry, I moved my camera there. If I don't know what options are necessarily are there for somebody else other than, I like what you did, asking the state attorney general to investigate this. And I think that, maybe that'll light a fire there, because hopefully, I think there is a significant public interest here in ensuring that there aren't a group of people that maybe have a closer involvement to this than we would like to think, who are involved in this and need to be found out. But I certainly would be looking at what was provided to the defense versus what comes out later. Honestly, if this video had not been provided to the defense, or alternatively was provided in such a way that they weren't able to adequately review it in time before these decisions were to be made, I would be run into the court with this.
It was a footnote on page 9,027,000. It's like a little link at the bottom that you would. Yeah. Now, wait, when Ron, would you be able to get access from like Ann Taylor, the counsel, or would you be getting these documents from the court, or would you be able to see the difference of what the prosecution had versus what the defense received, and vice versa? Like,
I'd have access to what was given to Ann. But also, as part of an appeal, you designate a record for the appellate court, and that may involve things that you don't necessarily have, but that the court has, and you can designate those to be given to the appellate court.
So I want to get a question out of the way in a comment, but I don't want to forget the important part, which is, let's return when I get this other part done. Let's return to the issue of what can be done if Brian Koberger doesn't want to file an appeal. If he himself isn't going to file an appeal, can anybody do it for him? We're going to save that for a minute. Let's talk for a moment about how they ruled out the screams. I know the girls saw this. I don't know if you saw it, Ron, of when I think it was Gunderson who was going to neighborhoods and asking if they heard anything and saw anything weird that night. And a guy who was interviewed at his doorstep said, it was kind of strange that there was some panties outside in the middle of the street outside the house. And he goes, okay, thanks a lot. And leaves. Like, that was it. No follow-on questions, no whatsoever. Yeah, right. And I'm thinking to myself, that's potentially something you want to go down. So did the same kind of thing happen?
Following a quadruple homicide? Okay, like maybe we're going down Greek Road. Maybe it is normal behavior for Pat.
Maybe.
However, following a quadruple homicide, that's weird.
So where I'm going with that is it possible the officers did a similar thing with the screams? Did you hear anything weird last night? I mean, there was, partying, some people were screaming and stuff like that. Okay, thanks. And then just walked off and then wrote in the report, we followed up with it. It was just normal screams from a party. That's what people said. Like, they didn't look into it real hard.
That's why I'd want to know who was interviewed and what they said. Yeah. And
how'd they get this video?
Re-interview them.
Yeah. So let's ask that question.
Point, Lee, by the way, I think that's a huge point.
Yeah, I would like to know that. That's why one of the filings, I don't know if I showed you the paperwork. One of the public records requests I asked was for what the officer's notes on who was interviewed and how and what the testimony was that led them to the conclusion that there was a no, never mind. Like, did you look into what I asked was, one, did you look into those sounds? Two, what was the conclusion of the investigation? Who did you interview? Can I see those notes? And then if you ruled it out, on what basis did you rule it out? So I'm asking for that. Now, whether they'll answer it or not, I don't know, but I'm asking.
Now, here's your follow-up question to that is, was there any other officer, how many officers asked questions about this? And list each and every officer that may have asked, and this applies to every question for every officer, but clearly there had to have been enough, evidence for them, I know that if you go back and watch the body cam of the girl in the robe, she really downplays this entire situation, right? She does not make it sound like people were getting unalived next door. She does say there were some weird sounds and they want to know what's going on. But clearly there was enough information for them to go and get this video.
And by the way, Kristen, you just made a great point. And I don't want to, we are not accusing anybody of anything, but you make a great point. If during your investigation, you say, well, what officer did the investigation on this part and this part? If you find out that critical piece of information always is the same officer, then you start asking questions. Why is it always, why is the most critical pieces of information always done by this officer? Then you start to look at what happened with that officer. So you do need to know who actually did the interview. And is there a pattern? Is all the really important exculpatory information the same officer? Right.
Like if I have a complicated issue in one of my cases, I would almost always go to one of them and say, hey, this is my math. This is the issue. This is the number I'm coming up. But, you know, I don't trust myself going into a trial with millions and millions of dollars without getting, you know, multiple. If it was just one officer that did all of the investigation by himself on going door to door, that is frightening. And is that normal behavior for the law enforcement?
Yeah, right.
Just have one person ask questions when you have these screams?
Yeah. And that leads to the question. I'm certainly going to ask all those questions. They're going to be pissed off. They're going to every day they're going to be like, fucking another letter from Lee came in today. Because every day I'm certifying.
And we're happy to review the letters and give you feedback. We are not licensed in no shape whatsoever in Idaho. Yeah. But I wouldn't mind looking at it and saying, hey, I would change this word to identify or, you know, add this and this.
Now, I'm wondering if they kind of shot themselves in the foot with that $20,000, because you know that there are grounds that you can, it's particularly if you can't afford it, if you are not individually interested in it, but it's more like you're doing it, you can ask that it be done for free.
Yeah, and I'm going to try those options as well. Like in the future, if they ask for someone, you know, crazy, I gave up the first time because I didn't know how to play the game, and now they made me mad enough. I'm going to learn how to play the game. There's several things. One, I can also genuinely represent myself as media in the interest of public interest, and there's a media rate for a lot of things, and the media rate's cheaper than your average Joe Blow. So I can ask for the media rate. I can, you know, again, I can push on them that if somebody's already paid for it, they can't charge me twice for the same work. It's already been done. So there's lots of things. I'm not going to just take their answer and pay it. That's what I'm saying. But we're going to put pressure on that to do it. And I don't know what, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know how much power the public has, right? There's certain, in my opinion, and I can make an argument and that this is an international case. I literally have people writing in from the Netherlands, South Africa, UK, Australia, that are watching a murder case in Idaho and Washington. In Idaho, this is an internationally interested case.
Members.
Right. So I think we can make the argument that the public has an interest in this case and wants answers. So will that be enough to apply pressure to get them to answer some questions, or can they just keep going, you know what, it's none of your business. We told you it's over. He pled guilty. That's what I get a lot. He pled guilty. So why are you still talking about it? It's over. He already said he did it. Why are we still talking about it? So what are those avenues for us? What are those avenues? If let's run this scenario. If Brian Koberger is afraid for his life, or he's afraid for his family life, or whatever, and he just isn't going to take it up, can anyone do it on his behalf? Is there any avenue, like a Innocence Project or a other mechanism, where somebody without his initiating it, start the ball rolling without his asking for it?
I don't know that necessarily you can with regard to his plea. I think what you've started doing by going to the AG's office, I think that's potentially an avenue. And honestly, I think the more public knowledge and public outcry there is about the inconsistencies, about the exculpatory evidence, about how this doesn't make sense, the more chance this is going to catch somebody's eye, in whether it be in federal or the state AG's office, and decide to take a look at this. So I think the avenue that you're contemplating here, going to the AG, I think that may be the way to go, particularly because I think it's in the public's best interest to know if there's somebody out there who participated in this who is not convicted, who is not known.
Yeah.
And
here's the thing too.
The squeaky wheel gets the toy. The more people that make a big deal about this and that say, hey, this just isn't right, or we want to know this, the more media, the problem is we're not getting a lot of media attention from this side, right? But the more that we get it out there and the more creators that do these things that you're doing, Lee, you know, you guys are the forefront of this, but the more people that do it, I agree, they're going to have no choice, but at some point for damage control to start complying.
Here's what bothers me. I want to ask you this question, because you guys all saw this video and you immediately had feelings about it, and you had the same kind of reaction I did, which is that how is that not exculpatory information? Now, here's the thing that's funny. I filed that Attorney General request for an investigation to be started, and I sent copies of that entire package along with the audio files and the timestamps of the screams to CNN, Fox News, CBS News, ABC News, News Nation, Idaho News, and several other entities. And not a single person's called, asked about it. They're not even like, you're telling me that nobody in any freaking mainstream media hasn't listened to the thing and went, what the fuck? Like, maybe this, no one, they're completely silent.
No, they not only silent, they double down. And it's all of them.
But see, that's my problem is, well, I have a lot of problems. I got personal problems. My problem is there's been no change in the narrative. None. No explanation, no change. Not, hey, we still think he very much did it, but now there's a ton of evidence coming out. And hey, could there be someone else involved? Like, you could still change your narrative a little bit and still, I don't want to say save face, but like, I just don't understand how no matter what comes out, you guys are like, we're good.
Yeah.
They were all sleeping when they were attacked.
Like, there's no movement at all. Even if you don't want to like go all the way to the other side of the fence and be like, hey, maybe we got this thing wrong. You think that there'd be at least like, you know, all this new evidence is coming out and some of this is pretty crazy. Could it be a different timeline? Like nothing, not even like a kind of.
Right.
The only person I think bend a teeny tiny bit is I would say would be Olivia. And the only reason I'm even saying that is because she then came out and said that the injuries to Kaylee were experimental. Now, I don't even really think most of us entirely know what that means, but I think that's potentially part of the reason that word is being used, because I don't really think you can define what experimental injuries are. But everyone else, like Steve, is still going on lives as of a month ago saying that they were all sleeping, when we all know that is, it's not even that it's reasonable to believe it's not true, that clearly was not true.
I think another thing you can do is keep a spotlight, a microscope, if you will, on Moscow PD. Yeah. Because if other things happen, and it may be that another case would provide a reason and a better vehicle for really looking at what's going on there with their practices. And if something may potentially is uncovered in another case involving them, it could cast a light on this and others and cast doubt on what was done, and potentially even open up this and other cases that are involved. If there is any sort of wrongdoing, corruption, or anything involved, and we can't rule that out. I'm not saying that it's there, but you can't rule it out here.
Ron, I have a question. So kind of just circling back on that. Well, what happens if EK isn't the one that's primarily like trying to, at least at this juncture, do anything or appeal the case or overturn anything? Is it possible that there would be new evidence, which I think we have, but is it possible that new evidence could come out and that the state could move to vacate its conviction because they realize they got it wrong? Like, I assume that would be really rare, but I wonder if that's possible. And I don't know Idaho laws. I'm obviously not licensed there, but I would think there would have to be some mechanism, if someone's not totally participating in it for whatever reason.
If they're
like
ethical.
The DNA lab had problems with it.
And that's my hope. Like, I'm trying to be, like you guys said, kind of a couple different, I'm trying to be that squeaky wheel. Like, I want to be that annoying asshole that never stops talking about it and keeps, and then eventually somebody might like, why is nobody answering this guy's questions? Maybe he's got some good questions. Why is everybody ignoring it? So I'm just going to keep putting it out there. I'm planning on reading to people with the letters that I'm filing so they can see what it does. They can follow along. Maybe like you said, maybe you guys can help make sure the language is right or whatever, and just give some advice on it or whatever, either on the down low or whatever.
And then you get 10 of the 1,000 people watching this to go do the same thing and even just to replicate. And then you get 10 more. And I mean, look at I know there's been a falling out, and I know there's some problems with Turtle Boy going on right now. But I mean, I watched, for anyone that's watched that documentary Outcry, where he actually was convicted and later exonerated. Yeah. Had it not been for the media that started with just a couple guys in Texas that believed in his innocence, and it took 6 years, I think 7 years, but he would still be rotting in jail for the rest of his life. And he actually was physically exonerated through the legal process. Mm-hmm. And I think about that. If someone did not take that vested interest and keep being that squeaky wheel, and then that led to an appellate attorney, and then that led to this, that guy would have spent the rest of his life in jail. Without question. And the guy that likely did it was running around through Texas.
If this happened as the official account is, then continued questions, continued investigation, overturning the rocks, all the stones, it should be revealing stuff consistent with that official explanation.
Yeah.
But it's not. And that's a concern. And I think the more stones that go overturned and the more questions that are asked, the more people that maybe are tracked down and talked to, the more chance you have of something happening. I think back, I despise unethical prosecutors, even more than unethical family law lawyers, because there is a public responsibility.
No, there's no unethical family.
Yeah. But on the same thing, I love ethical prosecutors, and I always go back. My favorite movie is My Cousin Vinny, and I love at the end when they completely exonerate the boys, and you look and the camera's on the prosecutor, and the judge is asking him, counsel, what do you say? And he looks angry for a minute, but then he gets a big smile and say, case is dismissed. That's what I want to see in a prosecutor, someone who is happy both that a correct conviction is made and that a wrongful conviction is overturned or not pursued.
Yeah.
There's more about justice than that little, W on their side of the column.
Any prosecutor that is concerned about wins versus losses, I have no respect for. It's about justice.
I agree.
So I want to show you something in a minute. That's why if you see me looking off is because I remembered somebody sent me something pretty powerful that I want to read before we close. But while I'm getting that up on screen for us in a minute, did you guys have other thoughts about things that you may have seen in that video? The cars that show up as kind of speed into the neighborhood, pick people up and leave the neighborhood. The guy that walks to the dumpster, did you see that and kind of looks into the dumpster and walks away? Did you guys feel anything else was weird about anything in that video?
I think you said it. Lee, was the guy just disappeared. He literally
that was Outcast. Yeah,
I did too. I pointed one that just completely vanished.
When you see that, it's almost like the filter, the outline.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay, is it a dog? Is it a bobcat? Is it this? But you see him go right, Sam. That one.
No, well, I was directly referencing Lee's video where he walks to the dumpster. It looks like he kind of looks into it, and then he goes.
And then he's gone.
He disappeared. Yeah.
Like it literally doesn't look like he's gone into
modified.
It looks like just
I don't know.
gone. And then so I just think the problem is with all of the voices you heard, all of the screaming you heard, like even just if you suspend for a minute, like that wasn't the incident, that's a lot of noise that you're hearing, which would be then like worst case, a lot of potential witnesses or people around. More likely seems like it was the incident to me or the principal, terrible event. But I just think there's so many people that have so much information that we have no idea about yet still, despite discovery of being conducted in this case, despite everything that's getting released. Like, I just think there's a lot of stuff out there that's not even included in the file. That's not even up to be released because it never made it there because the investigation wasn't thorough enough to ask these questions, to get the text messages from these people. I mean, you're in a small college town. People are talking about it, whether it's nefarious or not. I mean, there's a lot of information that I don't know get now this late in the game, but it sounds like there's tons there.
Okay, I have one thing to add to that, and then I have a question for Ron. So say all these people that say it was a party, right? Where's all these people in their interviews saying that they were at this house and there was a huge party? Like if
Yeah,
you're saying
that's
this was
right.
a party and those were, you know, a bunch of fraternity brothers and they were chanting, it was, where is all the testimony that is supporting in the interviews that's saying this was a party? Now,
Yeah.
Ron, my question to you is, if you believe in, and you're doing this on an appeal, if you believe like what I just said, do you have the right in an appeal once it started to go back and interview people that maybe never were interviewed, or B, to start getting evidence that may, like Sam just said, that maybe they didn't get there because they had already thought that they had enough?
I think there are limited circumstances where you may be able to do that. There are, and I know at least in California, there are appellate procedures you can use where that would be relevant. If you're dealing with an ongoing thing, maybe an order that's not directly appealable, but something during the pendency. There may be circumstances such as if you're trying to show that there's exculpatory evidence, where if that's part of the appeal or the post judgment procedure, then you would bring that up.
But do you believe it's likely that somebody's working on an appeal in the background and we just don't know? When is the statute of limitations up? I know you were talking about that not too long ago, but when isn't there something that would have to be filed by a certain time?
Yeah, and there's different statutes of limitation depending on what it is. A direct appeal, that's already passed. That was 42 days after the judgment. There are some limited grounds that they have up to a year. Or that he would have up to a year, so it would be sometime, I think next, was it September
July.
he pleaded?
But Ron, I just have
final.
I have a follow-up clarification question. So maybe there's not a wide mechanism through the appellate process to reopen or reissue discovery, but nothing would be prohibitive of people whom may be witnesses whom have never told their story or weren't asked the right questions from coming forward and explaining what they know, what they heard, or showing those messages, right? Like, and that's the kind of stuff. To me, when I look at discovery, I don't just look at, of course, formal discovery, but I think like what could be reasonably calculated to lead to the discovery of something that could exonerate him.
Yeah, and I don't want to look at it, there's an appeal, and then there is kind of an appellate process or a broader post-judgment challenge of a judgment. An appeal is part of that. There are other processes. And in fact, in some circumstances through the federal habeas corpus, there really is no deadline.
Yeah. Okay, but I'm still hoping, along with Sam, is that it's been 3+ years. I'm still hoping there might have been someone that was too afraid to talk 3 years ago, or was terrified, or didn't want to put themselves out there, or didn't want to be on social media. And then fast forward to this point, they're older, they're more mature, they understand the consequences more than they maybe did 3 years ago, or they're just in a different perspective or transition at like different phase of life. And now they want to come forward. Yeah. Now they're consenting to telling you, hey, guess what? I was at this house. I didn't see this, but I can tell you there was no party.
Yeah. So I want to say, one, I think let's get ready to wrap up here. I want to close on a thought for you that an individual shared with me, and I think it's really a poignant way to end this, in my opinion. And first of all, thank you all for coming on the show. I loved it more than the first time. It was amazing. This is great stuff. Again, I told you the legal stuff gets me excited. So, driving around the neighborhood was pretty cool, and don't get me wrong. But when we get into the weeds about the law and stuff like that, and whether or not there's exculpatory evidence and whatever, it really gets me excited. So I'm so excited. And Ron, having your perspective as an appellate kind of guy, that was amazing. And I think, you and I were talking briefly before we went live, and you were saying, while I don't do criminal law, the rules for appeals are the same. Rules of evidence is the same. And, so you've been through this. You've sat in the courtroom during criminal appeals process. So you've seen it all and you know it. So you can speak on it. So we have experts that are here. Anybody in law is understanding the law better than we do, right? So I appreciate you guys' perspective on that. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, we talked a little bit about, could there have been a police misconduct? Maybe one officer, is the whole department got some kind of problem? Is there a history? This book has been recommended. I'm going to pull this off the screen here and put this up. This book has been, hold on real quick. I'm going to remove this and add that. This book by John Grisham, relatively new book. I've had several people tell me, stop everything you're freaking doing and read this book. You will be amazed. I'm going to read a portion because a buddy of mine, Joe from State of the Deep bought this book, and he got a few pages and he sent me highlights, and he's like, holy shit, DA, this is going to be some stuff you need to talk about. Let me put this on stage.
I love John Grisham, by the way. I think he's an incredible writer.
So he is. Here's a couple paragraphs. Often the real killers were under the nose of the police from the outset of a crime, and in 2 cases, they were the star witnesses for the prosecution. DNA played an important role in several cases, but not in most. Perjury by police and civilian witnesses was pervasive in those stories. The convictions were not caused by unintentional mistakes by local law enforcement or misidentification by well-meaning eyewitnesses or honest but erroneous forensic analysis. No, they were rooted in law enforcement misconduct and chicanery, men and women hell-bent on clearing cases and gaining a conviction through a wide variety of illicit means, subordination of perjury, secret deals with criminals in exchange for their fabricated testimony, coercing witnesses into fake testimony, suspects falsely to confess, use of discredited and inept forensic analysis, suppression of exculpatory evidence from the defense, or other acts that obstructed justice and resulted in the ruination of innocent lives to the relief of the actual perpetrators. Is that not scary to think about? That this book, he's pointing out that this is something that happens in America.
It does.
That they sometimes get hell-bent on putting people away, will fabricate and work to fabricate evidence, even working with the people who actually committed the crime to testify against somebody who didn't commit the crime to put them away. Could that have happened again in this case?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a hell yeah. I think it's possible that it could happen again.
I think we all have to remember that everyone is human, and I don't say that to like give everyone this like grace blanket or anything. It's just that you never know why people are doing things. In every area and every practice, there are extremely ethical attorneys and there are extremely unethical attorneys that you are very confused how they got their license. We like, just for the practice of being an attorney in California, you know, and all attorneys, they give an oath when they're sworn in. And I take that very seriously. I know Ron and Kristen take that very seriously, but you know, you're swearing under oath that you are going to support the Constitution of the United States, in California, the Constitution of the state of California, and to like faithfully discharge like your duties as an attorney to the best of your knowledge and ability. So you're prohibited from going in and making these false facts and being misleading, but we see it happen. So I think there's often this disconnect between like, well, they shouldn't do it, or these people shouldn't do it, police officers shouldn't do it, judges, attorneys shouldn't do it. And just the reality is that, but a lot of people do. And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
For
Same
me.
with law enforcement. Yeah, it happens with judges too. I'm not saying I'm not saying it specifically in this case, but it happens.
Yeah, when I was a young attorney, I handled a lot of civil cases of personal injury, wrongful termination. We sued a lot of businesses. I would go into depositions and I had to be prepared. We assumed that the people who were produced by the business, for instance, were going to lie. It was, we had to figure out how are we going to catch them in those lies. So it wasn't a question of, are they going to lie? It's how do we catch them in their lies, because we assume that that's going to happen. And that applied to private businesses and public entities and law enforcement.
Yeah. And we need to catch them first, and we need to make sure we have the evidence to do it in the middle of the deposition.
Mm-hmm. And if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide. You know, if someone is accusing you, then give us a different explanation. We're not pointing the finger at anyone. We're saying it's confusing, and give us a better explanation, because the story that was provided is not matching up with the evidence that we've received. Like, clearly not.
Mm-hmm.
Lee, what was the name of that book, that the one that just came out? Because I want to go get it. I've been waiting for that to come out.
There it is. John Grisham's Framed: Astonishing True Stories of Wrongful Convictions.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this one. I read 10, 15 of his books, and he's you feel like you're in the book when you're reading them. They're very he's a great writer. I think he was like a lawyer that turned novelist and whatever, and he's a smart lawyer, a lawyer that doesn't practice anymore, which is the smartest ones that exist.
I sent a book club, Kristen.
Right.
All the most successful, richest, and less stressed attorneys actually don't practice.
Well, thank you all. I honestly hope a million people see this. This is pure gold. I think the conversation leads a lot of talking points. I think there was a lot of great things. I love to hear, especially from Ron, saying that, hey, I think you made a great first step filing that request to the Attorney General. It's encouraging to me. I plan on being the squeaky wheel. I hope other people join the fight. I hope we work together. I plan on showing all my documents. I'm going to post all my letters that I'm doing so people can look at them and see what's already been done, so you don't have to duplicate the effort. Or maybe it is good to duplicate that effort. I don't know. But the point being is that I plan on trying to help out with putting pressure on truth and justice. We'll work out a time when we close this down on when we can premiere this together. So hopefully all three of you can be on the premiere and answer questions and comments from the audience live. I know it's hard to get everybody's schedules together.
We will. We'll make it work. And on behalf of the Custody Queens, to your endeavor and what you're doing, we would like to donate, the Custody Queens and Ron's actually Custody Queen. He loves when I say that. We would like to donate $500 towards your fund for being the squeaky wheel, because I think it's the right thing. And either way, I think it's going to give us answers one way or the other. But we would like to donate because I think what you're doing is it's ballsy. It's putting yourself out there. And I think I'm hoping a lot of people will follow what you're doing. So we would like to donate to that GoFund, and I'll make sure that I get my my billing manager to get that over to you.
Much love. I thank you guys so much. That means a lot, and hopefully other people will donate to the cause. When I started the fund out, it had $200, and within 24 hours it went to $1,500.
I saw that.
And it's jumping up. So people believe in it, and they're fired up, and they're excited. So thank you so much. And again, for those who do want to contribute, I will not spend a dime of that for anything other than these fights. So it'll be for the certified letters. It'll be for the fights when they ask for money. Which again, I won't misuse the money and just pay their $20,000 or in excess of $20,000 price. We'll fight that.
Reviewing all your letters to make
sure.
That,
yeah. Now that you're vested interest, right? So
when you get more documents, bring us on.
Okay, I will do.
Yeah,
that.
Ron will make sure you have all the buzzwords in them. But I know we're happy to donate our time as well. And thank you on behalf of all of us over here at Custody Queens. Lee, we truly value treasure, and more than anything, I think we just like the conversation.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Sam, Kristen, Ron. Until next time, let's go fight the good fight. Right?
Let's go.